7 as well of the New Telegraph. And this is a study on page 28 of the New Telegraph. Wearing too much perfume, makeup on kids poses cancer risk. You get to check that on page 28 of the New Telegraph. Now to the last paper for this morning. This is the Nation newspaper. Yes, on the front page of the Nation, Obasanjo Ayoko differ on need for new constitution, and UBA trans-border payment now slimless. Fire shade close to tears after acquittal by court. You got to check that on page 4 and by extension page 6 of the Nation paper. And the Obasanjo Ayoko differ on new constitution can be found on page 3 of the Nation paper as well. Why Southwest should endorse Tinubu for second term now, coming from Kayode Ojo, and that's on page 4. And also knocks for ex-VP Atiku after dumping PDP for third time. I left because of irreconcilable differences. Exit is of no effect, says Makinde. You get to check that on the front page, and you can continue on page 42, I guess, of the Nation paper. Otudeko exit forced Holdco in 323 billion naira deal. Prayers for Buhari plans to end fish import. That's on page 6 of the Nation paper. These are the headlines making the rounds this morning. And some of the ones to get to check out for today is the Turkish warning of fistula terrorist group in Nigeria, and how the police are telling us it is only political. They dismiss the Turkish envoy alarm as political. We also get to check that, this morning. And other ones we should touch is the statement credited to Obasanjo saying that Nigeria's problem is not constitutional but operators. Right, and other ones, if time permits, that we'll get to check out is how abducted Niger women return with pregnancies and babies. It's not actually new, but there's something we want to bring out from this one this morning. And yes, our 151 top of police officers are facing disciplinary panel. For what exactly? This morning we get to check them out. And with me, to help with the analysis is Barrister Folusho Lakbo. Good morning to you, sir.
Yes, good morning this morning, sweetheart. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you.
Good morning, Nigerians. I hope I met you well. Of course, I know you are doing fine. As I tell us every day to at least try to forgive so that you can heal your own wound. Then I will tell you too that watch what you do to another person, because at the end of the day, whatever you do will come back to you. Good morning this morning.
Thank you very much for that one. Remember, we're live on Facebook. On Facebook is at Hi-FLIER 103.3 FM live. At Hi-FLIER 103.3 FM live. Okay, so we're going to make our analysis very brief this morning so we can accommodate as many calls and take your messages, as soon as possible. All right, so like I said, we have a whole lot to talk about those who operate it. The former president said, and I quote, "A nation's constitution as the fundamental law must reflect the history, the constituents, and the aspirations of the people. It must be sacrosanct. From my experience in operating our constitution, I will be the first to point out some areas of our constitution that needs amendment. However, for me, no constitution can ever be regarded as perfect. But whatever the strength or weakness of a constitution is, the most important issue, to my own understanding and experience, is the operators of the constitution." End of quote. He pointed out that even the best constitution could be manipulated and misused by its operators. These are the words of former President Olusegun Obasanjo. Nigeria's problem is not the constitution, but those that are operating the constitution. Your take on that?
Yeah, that's very deep. But of course, Baba is right to a half.
Okay.
Yeah. Of course, we lack leadership in Nigeria, and it will seem that it is, what we have is leadership crisis. But the function of law is correction. The function of law is to maintain social justice. The function of law is to force people to obey. And that is why it is called law. And that is why the good book, the Bible, says that where there is no law, there is no offense. Because the law is there, stating some behaviors of military. Schedule is not even the law, it's just the schedule to that decree. So to that extent, some people sat together and decided that this is what we have to have as a constitution of Nigeria. So since Nigerians do not participate in the making of that law is not autochthonous. It is not a Nigerian law. It is some people's law. Of course, somebody might say that the military usually invites some people to write it. Of course, but this law was not subject to the people to admit or to agree with or to not agree with. For instance, the 1954 Constitution, one of the reasons which culminated into the Independence Constitution of 1960, one of the reasons that Constitution is one of the best constitutions is the fact that after the making, after the constituents sat and everything, it was subjected to referendum. Every part of Nigerians, section by section, they said, do you want this? Do you want a regional government? Yes or no? Yes. Do you want I'm just stating an example. Do you want part-time legislature? Yes. Do you want that? Yes. Do you want it? No. Because referendum is about yes or no. But the constitutions of Nigeria, even the 1979 constitution and even the 1999 constitutions, were not subjected to referendum to the people. It is when you done that will tell me that will tell us that we the people of Nigeria gave ourselves this law. We the people of Nigeria never gave ourselves those laws. That is one. Then two, the fact that law unified Nigeria, and that is the bane of that they are not apart. The federal, and that is why the federal government could do anything. They shout on the state, they do a whole lot of things, they do bail out, they do in fact, it should be the state that should bail out the federal if there is any problem. And because in the First Republic, the Western Nigeria bailed out federal government when the federal government was not able to pay the salaries of their staff. It was the Western Nigeria that paid for them. Why? Because every resources of the states or of the regions were within the region. The premiers use it or spend it for the purpose of that region, and that was why the Western region was able to have the first stadium, the first radio and television, the first this, the first that, the first university, the first everything, because even the first skyscraper. Why? Because the resources of Western Nigeria was based and was used for Western Nigerians. Today, what do we have? The resources of each state is harnessed and taken to the center, and the center will now begin to give the state stipends. Why the federal government will have 52%? The states together will have less than that, and the local government too. And that is another thing. A federal government have two units, the state and the constituent, the central and the constituent states. But in this constitution, the constitution included local governments, and that was why states are unable to create their own local government. It is the state that ought to create local government and not the federal. So when Lagos State started or wanted to do it, they said, okay, because we are not saying you cannot create your local government, but it must, because that is the provision of the constitution, it must be written in the constitution. And how will it be written in the constitution? After the creation, you submit it to the National Assembly. The National Assembly will look at it and we take it to all the states and all that shenanigans and whatever. So what I'm saying in essence is that, of course, we might have leadership crisis, but that leadership crisis grows from the Constitution, because the Constitution itself is illegal. The Constitution itself is lying. The Constitution itself is not autochthonous. It's not the people's law. So until and unless